Welcome to the Fresh Vending Podcast, where we discuss how smart vending machines are revolutionizing fresh food accessibility for both creators and consumers.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 10 of the Fresh Vending Podcast. This is Isaac.
I'm Nathan.
And today we wanted to talk about food equity and food equality. This is a huge topic, and we're grateful to be able to touch on it because it's really important to our mission at FoodSpot. As you know, Nathan and I are both a part of a company called FoodSpot, and our mission is to democratize fresh food. It's kind of interesting, Nathan. We were talking in the previous episode about the distribution problems of fresh food in the US and how we believe it's almost like a human right for people to have fresh food. And that kind of gets a little bit controversial when you start saying something's a human right. But, I thought about it as you were speaking. And before, when we were hunter-gatherers, anyone could walk up to, a plant and munch off some of the leaves or berries or it was just accessible to everyone. And with kind of industrialization and civilization advancing, we have made so many improvements where, we have farms that can mass produce these things, and we can grow for a large population. But because of this distribution problem, it's almost some little sectors and shadows of society have lost access to that fresh food that maybe before, during, when we were all living in forests and stuff, we could just pick off plants. And now it's almost like some small parts of the population have moved backwards and that they can't access that food.
Yeah, and I think the two places that come to mind most frequently for me are like inner city. And then also like, and more specifically impoverished neighborhoods, and then also places that are very industrial. And the reason that those two come to mind is, yes, it's frustrating if you're at an airport at, 11 o'clock at night and you don't have access to high quality fresh food, but how often does that happen? It doesn't happen every single day. So for those reasons, those are kind of the two like topical examples that come to mind. And before we dive in, Isaac, I think it's important to talk about the difference between food equity versus food equality, because I think those are terms that are used interchangeably, but they're a little bit different. So food equality, or often referred to as food security, is making sure that fresh food is always available. So that's, the examples are like, if I'm a nurse at 2 a.m., there's fresh food is available within the building. So that's great. That's a huge step. That's something that that we would all benefit from, making sure that it's always available. But in the terms of like accessible is a little bit different. Like that nurse, she probably has a good job. She can, regular salary, she can afford to get that. So that's great. And that's a big win for her to have food security from having that vending machine or something in the break room, whatever it is, available to her. But what about that, father of five that's maybe sitting in the ER and, he's got $2 in his pocket and the food's there, but can he actually access the food? So it's not just about proximity. It's about the ability to be able to, take the food, take the nourishment and have that level of actually consuming it. And the example that I heard recently that I really like is, from a food equality standpoint, if you're standing at an apple tree and you have somebody that's 4 feet tall, 5 feet tall, and 6 feet tall, well, it's going to be easiest for that tall person to reach the apples, right? They're going to have much better accessibility. From a food equity standpoint, you're going to think about that differential. You're not going to give everybody a crate to stand on that's the exact same size, because the person that's 6 feet tall is still going to have an advantage. So maybe the person that's 4 feet tall, they get a step stool. So ultimately everybody's reach is the exact same height. And that's kind of what the concept of food equity is. So that, person that's sitting in ER that only has $2 in their pocket, is there a way to be able to not only give them that proximity access, but give them choice, the funds to be able to purchase it, or some sort of subsidy, and then finally dignity, where it's anonymous, and nobody knows when somebody's going to access that food, who's subsidized and who's not. And this is something that we get really excited about because it's part of our mission statement as a company, and it's just kind of who we are as people. The story that comes to mind for myself is, I grew up in a city, Rochester, New York, in an inner city school, and I had friends that their parents were, lawyers and doctors. I also had friends that maybe one of their parents was not in the picture at all. Maybe they're incarcerated. Maybe they had drug addiction. And go to these, friends' houses, and you look in the fridge, and maybe there's, a 12 pack of beer and some condiments. And it's something that was really, the first couple of times that I experienced that, I was kind of shocked. I was used to going to my house and you open it up and there's, at a minimum, you could at least have a bowl of cereal or something like that. But usually the fridge was very full, and it really, that's when I really started to learn about the dignity piece. The one friend that I'm thinking about in particular that I was closest with, he always had like the most pristine Jordan sneakers. I mean, these things were like, he'd have them for 6 months and it would still look like, and he'd wear them all the time, but it would look like they just came out of the box yesterday. And he took really good care of these sneakers. And frequently we would find ourselves in these situations where, friends were going out to eat, or, we'd have like, sports practice afterwards, and he wouldn't have anything to kind of hold him over till dinner, and all the other kids did, and things like that. And it took me a while to kind of move past the fact that, I never had sneakers that were as nice as these Jordans. It took me a while to move past the fact that that was kind of his hood ornament of what he wanted to show the world. But in reality, he was going through this like daily struggle of, forget about high quality food, just having access to any food, period. And it was something that really stuck with me about this dignity piece. And I think it's something that is really important when we talk about food equality, of giving everybody the same resources, but then food equity, that we think about it in terms of like a stool with 3 legs, that it is that access, it is that choice, but that the dignity component is super important. Is there anything in there that kind of sticks out to you, Isaac, or have you ever had those types of experiences where, I remember when it finally clicked in my head, the refrigerator experience of the 12 pack and the condiments versus the pristine Jordans? It was a very formative moment for me when I was a young teenager. Have you ever had any experiences like that where it just kind of, the differential of lifestyle and accessibility kind of stops you in your tracks for a moment when it's so blatantly obvious in front of your face?
Yeah, I think I can think of, well, first of all, thank you for sharing. I can think of 2 experiences. One is I would go to soup kitchens a lot when I was a teenager, kind of preteen, with church activities and things like that. And we would serve, not high quality fresh food. We'd serve food to people that needed it, that came and that we dish up for them. And I think that was a moment where I realized, not everyone has a fridge they can go to, or even a fridge in general. And it kind of made me look at, if I didn't have, I think about every day, like, what do I want to eat? Right? Like, I have choice, right? Like, oh, what do I want to eat? And when we were going out to eat growing up, my dad would always say, like, it's a privilege that we have choice. Like, we can choose where we want to go out to eat. Whereas, people that would come into these soup kitchens, they were just grateful to have, the can of beans and soup and crackers, right, that we were feeding them. And that in and of itself kind of just opened my eyes to the fact that, yeah, we're not on a level playing field in terms of food access and food equity. And then the other is similar, but where we would do canned food drives, and I would go house to house and collect canned food for people. And, I would open the bag sometimes and see, oh, I don't really like these kind of beans, or I don't. And then I thought, if I was in a position where I didn't have anything, this would be quite amazing. So a little bit of a detour from what you were saying, but yeah, those experiences kind of helped me understand that, we're not on the same playing field with even people that are super proximate to us in terms of food equity, food choice, and dignity.
Yeah, I can remember when I think I must have been about 11 years old, and my brother was in Boy Scouts, as was I, and he was doing his Eagle Scout project, and he had amassed, I want to say it was probably 3,000 canned goods in our driveway as part of his project. And I remember standing there and thinking in that moment, like, wow, like how cool is this that we're able to impact so many people. And I felt so proud of him and what he had done and the accomplishment. And it was just in front of me, right? I'd never seen that many canned goods before. And, now looking back, like, yes, that was absolutely amazing. But in the same sense, like, that's not what we ate in our household. Did we have canned goods? Sure. Did we eat canned food? Totally. But there was, most of the time, there was a fresh component. There was, there was all these different, pretty much all the time there was a fresh component, but there was fresh vegetables and some sort of fresh protein and things like that. And it's just different, and we talked about it in the previous episode of how it becomes kind of systemic. So taking a look at how we can change that and what is the opportunity in front of us, looking today at what are the options out there. If you're food insecure, or you're struggling with food equity, it's like, I think in most places there's pantries or some sort of community cupboard or something like that, where you can go for, maybe a few hours a day, and they have things like canned goods, and maybe you can get some, pantry type things like potatoes and occasionally some fresh produce and stuff like that. And that's fantastic. And those things have been around for a long time, but they still suffer from what you were talking about earlier, Isaac, which is that American distribution problem. We have more than enough high quality fresh food in the United States to feed everybody every day. Like that's a given. We have way more than enough.
Yeah.
And the reason that, pantries have this food is it's a distribution challenge of when 25 Starbucks in the city are going to throw away those sandwiches at the end of the day. There's no method to be able to get those sandwiches to people, although they're still good for, arguably another 15 or 20 hours after that. That's just one example. But as you look at all the different, food, whether it's raw ingredients, whole ingredients, finished food products, it's all there. We just don't know how to get it to people. So I think, pantries struggle with the two concepts of access, because usually you can only go there limited hours. You don't always have the choice. You definitely don't have, the dignity or kind of remaining anonymous when you go there. So that kind of doesn't touch on any of the three legs of the equity stool that we mentioned earlier. That's more about just strict food security, which is kind of that equality stance, right? And again, I'm not knocking it, because that's great. And I'm fortunate enough to have never been in that position. But that's a fundamental, kind of flaw, is that it doesn't touch on the equity piece. Another example that has started picking up traction in the last 15 or 20 years. Isaac, are you familiar with the concept of community fridges?
I've heard of them, but I haven't really seen any in the wild. Actually, maybe we should pull up some pictures, because I think it's really, I don't know. I've heard of the concept, but I haven't grasped it quite yet.
Yeah, well, I've been familiar with it for quite a while. I think the first time I heard about a community fridge was like maybe 10 or 15 years ago. They were doing it in Brooklyn, and I also heard about it in Portland. But what the concept is you take an old, usually it's an old refrigerator that somebody has and they're, going to get rid of it, or it's maybe out in their garage. And they literally run an extension cord from their house out to the curb. They put it on the curb, and anybody in the community is welcome to put food in or take food out as much as you want, in or out. And it's just it's this honor system thing. And it's also just recognizing the fundamental flaws that we have in our food system. And just saying, let's just, cut through, let's throw, legalities out the door and food safety and all those things, and just say, you know what, the average person that's going to use this is going to be high integrity. They're going to put the food in that they don't need, and they're going to take just as much as they need, because they realize that the people that are going to be using this service are people that really, really need it. And the beauty of it is that those community fridges, they start to address that equity stool concept. They're giving access, and they're also giving a certain level of dignity and choice. But it's starting to move in that direction, and it's addressing this the distribution problem that we have in the US. And I think the most recent article that I read, there's somewhere around 150 to 200 of these fridges, and now they're in like most major cities. I saw it in Chicago. I saw that they're doing it in Miami. And sometimes now it's even sponsored by like a church or something like that. It's not necessarily like an individual that's doing it. I saw in certain places, I think it was in Miami, or maybe that Chicago one, they had figured out how to take donations from larger companies like Target, and to be able to have it go into the fridge, where Target didn't have to worry about the legal implications of somebody eats the food, they get sick, Target gets sued, like those types of things. There's a lot of kind of ugly aspects on the underbelly, but in essence, it's a really amazing, beautiful way that, people decided to just kind of cut through all the red tape and take their own fridges and be able to contribute to it on a regular basis. I just thought it was really cool. Like I said, I've been aware of it for 10 or 15 years, but it was something that really excited me, and was, a small piece of the inspiration before starting FoodSpot, of like, where could we ultimately take this? Is that something that, we could work with large companies across the country and figure out, how do we make something like that work, and really cover them from a legal standpoint? It's sad, but there've been cases where, somebody was donating product, and a lot of times people donate product after they should, and it really should be going to compost. At the end of the day, we're feeding human beings. And because of that, there have been times when lawsuits have come out where somebody that's in need of free food eats it, gets sick, and then it just kind of takes something that's beautiful and turns it into something that's kind of unfortunate and dramatically increases waste. So that's the legality challenge that I was mentioning.
Yeah. So with these fridges, Nathan, if you don't mind, and the pantries that we're talking about as well, what are their main problems, and how can something like our solution solve them?
Yeah, so we talked about the pantries. It's open limited hours. It doesn't have a great selection. A lot of times it assumes that you know how to cook or you have access to a kitchen. So those are some of the challenges on the pantry side. But again, it's something that has a very brings meaningful value to the community, not knocking it, but thinking, how can we evolve the pantry concept? On the other side, when we talked about community fridges, it's very Wild West. So once you just put food in there, nobody knows how long has it been sitting in the fridge. Is it going to expire? Do we have people that are abusing the system, and maybe, that can perfectly afford food, and they're just taking food out of there kind of with the wrong intentions when they have means? Sure, there's some of that can happen. Or just other things like, say that the fridge lost power in the middle of the night for 4 hours, and the food in there is not safe to eat, just things like that. So when we look at a technology like RFID, you're tracking every single item within the fridge independently, and it can all upload to a dashboard. So it's something that suddenly you've gone past the challenges of the pantries, because anybody can stock the fridge. So the distribution issue is eliminated. It's open 24 hours a day. So that's both bringing the, food security, but then you start to step into checking the box of access. You can have, with the variety that you can put in there, you start to check the box of choice and giving a lot more variety. You have the ability to remotely check the inventory from anywhere, from a computer, from a smartphone. This starts to really change the dynamic. And then the last piece in there is dignity, right? You're getting past the dignity because you're able to, hypothetically, you can have some people that are in a subsidized group where they can unlock or access the fridge using a smartphone, or even be given a fob where they can access it, and nobody knows, is this somebody that is paying for food in the fridge? Is it completely free? You just don't know how they're accessing the fridge. They can do that anonymously. The other piece is like the legalities. So by putting a sticker and tracking every single item in the fridge, all of a sudden you have traceability to know who put the food in the fridge, when did they put it in, and when should that be thrown out. So you could hypothetically have 20 different people, businesses, whatever it may be, contributing to this fridge. And on one dashboard, you can see everything, and you could say, okay, those 3 items need to be removed, because you're tracking it on an individual basis. So it's something that is really exciting to think about. How can we systemically start taking all of this food that would otherwise be waste and bring it in an organized way with full traceability, and make sure that we're giving access to those that need it most? So maybe the community assistance program, if it's like a social welfare, could say, okay, well, this person is going to get a key fob, or they're going to have access via smartphone. If they don't have a smartphone, then they can use the fob. They can access these fridges, take as much as they want, completely anonymous, and it starts to suddenly create something that surpasses food equality, gets into checking the boxes of food equity, and simultaneously you're fueling food equity with food that would very frequently just be wasted otherwise. So that's kind of the paradigm shift for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that is very cool. And so if I could just give an example. So say I'm a food pantry operator or owner, I can go out to the Starbucks in my community. I can go out to the Jimmy John's and the Subways and the Paneras, and I say, all right, here's a roll of stickers for you, Starbucks, for your, you can assign these to maybe say generically, like all of your sandwiches that are about to go bad, you can put a sticker on this, and here's your smartphone login. Stock the fridge anytime when you have these sandwiches, just make sure you put a sticker on it. Same thing to the other stores with whatever items that they typically need to throw away. And then I can essentially from one place see, oh, John from Starbucks stocked the fridge, Thursday with sandwiches. And then James from Panera did soups, yesterday. And I can just see all of these items that were stocked at different times and understand, when do I need to start throwing these away? And then on the access side, anyone can access the fridge. I can put it in whatever, the train station or whatever. Anyone can access the fridge. Someone that could use a credit card and just pay for the items that Starbucks or whoever determines, or, and the people in need can use a key fob or a smartphone app or something that just gives it to them for free.
Yeah, absolutely. And the exciting part, or the cool part about that you were saying, is like, yes, you can commingle. So if Panera normally sells that soup for $6, maybe they say, you know what, we're going to sell it for $4 or give it for free because otherwise it was going to be waste.
Yeah.
So it's really beautiful because you're going to get that soup to those people that need it. And also at the same time, there's going to be people that walk by and they're like, yeah, it's a discount on a Panera soup. Like, excellent. I want that. And they're going to pay, maybe they get that 30% off or 15% off, or it could be full price. But ultimately what that's going to do is it's going to generate revenue to be able to make that a sustainable, scalable practice. And you also have that full traceability on the individual product from a food safety standpoint. So this is like, it's kind of tying all of this in, all of these different issues that are symptomatic of the distribution challenge. And it's kind of addressing all of them simultaneously. But you hit the nail on the head. All you need to stock a smart fridge with full traceability is a roll of stickers and a smartphone for the employee of the Starbucks or the Panera or whatever it is. So it becomes this really amazing dynamic way to fuel equality and equity with waste in a way that's sustainable and safe.
This is amazing. So I just read a study the other day. It was a study from North Carolina. They took grocery store transaction data from 500 grocery stores around the state of North Carolina. And they looked at participants of SNAP, or Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program participants, and compared those with those that were participating in Super SNAP, which is a program that gave an extra, I think, $40 for fresh fruits and vegetables. And you enrolled in that because your doctor suggested, hey, you could really benefit from introducing some fresh fruits and vegetables into your diet. And those that were a part of the Super SNAP program, they bought more fruits and vegetables. The proportion of fruits and vegetables of their purchase was higher, and the proportion of sugar sweetened beverages was lower than those who were on just regular SNAP. So in other words, when people are incentivized and when they have access through extra funds, or in this case, to better quality food, their health and food choices actually change. And I think that's our vision really with this solution in this application specifically.
Yeah. And I always love how you look at it from like the behavioral side, because I think that, like you said, you can incentivize good decisions with fruits and vegetables first. You can also make it more accessible in terms of finished meals that are much more nutritionally balanced. Because the other thing is that I know from many experiences is that you could go to somebody and say, hey, here's all these amazing fruits and vegetables that you have access to. And they'll say, like, I just don't know how to make it taste good and still be healthy. Like, anybody can dump a ton of salt on something and fry it in deep fat and say, yep, I'm eating my vegetables. But again, I think that it's being able to say, yes, it's in close proximity. Yes, it's you can access it. We can do other things to give you more, like you said, with the Super SNAP. And we can also have things like fully finished meals that are delicious and nutritionally balanced. So there's really no reason that if you want to eat healthy and you want to have these, better life outcomes with your health, that you can do that. You can always have that choice. And that's really what it boils down to.
Great. Well, we better get to work if we want to push this mission forward and get off the pod. But any other closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think the last piece that I wanted to talk about, and I think this is like a big takeaway for American distribution, is it's really about starting to think fundamentally different about how we look at shelf life. So we used the Panera soup as an example. So let's say that, Panera makes this soup and maybe it has a 5-day shelf life until they have to toss it. Well, think about how many hours out of the day is Panera actually open? I don't know, but let's just, for easy numbers, let's just say that they're open 12 hours a day. So right there, 50% of the shelf life is gone because the store's closed. You can't buy it, right?
Yeah.
And then when you look at that 12 hours a day that Panera is open with that soup, how many hours out of the day do you really want to eat that soup where it's appropriate. Like, sure, we can eat soup for dinner and breakfast and a late night snack, but I would say most of the time, I think people think of soup and they're like, yes, it's appealing and it's most relevant for around lunchtime. So maybe, when you combine, you're open 12 hours a day, but 30% of that is actually relevant. You're looking at about a 3.5 hour window a day that product is both for sale and that it's most relevant. You can't always fix the relevance factor, but what we can do is say, what if that soup in the last 30 hours of shelf life, like we know that that's going to expire tomorrow, end of day. So let's go ahead and stock our local fridge with that soup and make sure that it's for sale the entire 30 hours of the rest of its, of its shelf life towards the end of life. And I think that's another thing that is a real good kind of thing to think about, because that's a massive shift when you think about increasing shelf life by at least 50% for the last, day and a half. And that's another thing that I think is really going to be a great driver for this program as we start rolling this out more systematically, to take the spirit of, the community fridge program, and then tying in, kind of the pantries are kind of much more successful and prevalent on a larger scalable level, combining all of that together and starting some sort of, final 30-hour shelf life program where the products are being populated, which again, if the Panera soup's discounted a little bit, it's going to drive volume of purchases, which is also going to, there's going to be, many more people taking the food, keeping it really fresh, high turnover. So I think that's the last concept that, we're working on right now. And we can't wait to have these learnings and, see not only our technology, but technologies that are the same or adjacent to us kind of participate in this next generation of community fridge, community pantry, and really starting to bring equity through smarter distribution.
And that is a great conclusion. If you are interested and excited as us about this topic and this application, please reach out. Our contact info is in the description below. Again, thank you for joining us for episode 10 of the Fresh Vending Podcast. This has been great. We'll see you next time.
See you later. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the show this week. If you're interested in learning more about smart vending platforms, you can visit us at launchfoodspot.com. I'm Nathan Downs, and you've been listening to the Fresh Vending Podcast.